And then we are going to start tonight before I turn things over to Madeline. As our Journey Towards Justice team, we want to start our events with a native land acknowledgement. So I'm going to have Sue lead that for us tonight.
Okay. Today we acknowledge that we gather as Diamond Lake Lutheran Church on the traditional land of the Wapikute Band of the Santee Division of the Dakota people, past and present. We further acknowledge that both the state of Minnesota and the United States government carried out genocide, ethnic cleansing, forced removal, and broken promises against the Dakota as a way to acquire land. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. Sorry about that. This calls us to commit to continuing to learn how to be better stewards of the land we inhabit as well.
Thank you, Sue. And so tonight we are privileged to have Madeline Troyer with us, who is associate for, I'll let you give your title and that sort of thing, but she's working for the Synod office and is also here through Lutheran Volunteer Corps. So she'll be finishing up her time with the Synod and her year with LVC coming up in June. So thank you so much, Madeline, for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you all for having me. I am Madeline Troyer. I serve as the Assistant Environmental Justice Organizer with the Minneapolis Area Synod. So that means I work very closely with our EcoFaith network, which strives to connect the larger group of environmental-minded people around the Synod, and hopefully to bring in more people, to work on issues that we find central to our faith in working towards caring for creation. So mainly our group focuses around energy issues. We've found that being very specific can give us more power to cause change. So we have 3 different areas around energy that we're working with. And if I'll have time for questions at the end, if you want to ask about that, I can do that. But we also have our Ecumenical Water Initiative, saying that water is central to our faith and that we should learn to connect to it and care for it, because caring for water also is a way to care for people. And it's kind of a good point for everybody to work with. So people who are new to the environmental movement, water is a good connecting point. People who have engaged with it for many years in their life can still learn and care for our waters. So I'm coming to you today to talk about our waters. But before we start, I like to take a picture of the groups that I do, partly because it helps me to remember who's in the room, but also every now and then we share them to our larger platforms, either through our newsletter or to our Facebook. So are you guys good if I take a photo? And then if anybody's not okay with me sharing it to Facebook, maybe just send me a message or shout something out. But I will get that. Oh, let me start over. There we go.
I thought there was one where you could just do the whole speaker, do the whole screen.
So I'll start sharing my screen here because I do have a presentation, and that should make it so your whole screen goes big as well. And let me push it into present mode. There we go. So I already introduced myself, but I'm going to start off reading scripture first off. So I'm going to read from Genesis 2:10 through 15. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. From there, it was separated into 4 headwaters. The names of the first is Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good. Aromatic resin and oxen also are there. The name of the second river is Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is Tigris. It runs along the east side of Asher. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. The Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to take care of it. So I start with this scripture because it ends with us being put into the garden to work it. It also talks about the 4 rivers that are carrying wealthy things into this land and connecting the land together. And that takes us to where we're at, which we are at the headwaters of the Mississippi River up here, where 4 rivers join together into the Mississippi. So I think that just connects us on a deeper level to this scripture here. And so a little bit more about myself. I grew up in Ohio, kind of towards the start of the Ohio River, and also in the Mississippi River watershed basin. My parents still live there. And then I went to college out in Pennsylvania, which is off the side of this map, in the Chesapeake watershed. My sister is currently in school in Virginia, also not in this watershed, but my brother is going to school in Kansas, so he's connected to me through our watershed. And then currently I'm living in the Bassett Creek watershed district. So this is just another picture of kind of the different watersheds that connect all of us and where we might be coming from as well. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, hear from you and learn who's in the room here. And just, you can say your name and kind of where you're from, and then maybe how you're connected to your place. And you can just shout it out, or if that doesn't work, you can call in somebody else.
Well, I'm Kathy, and I grew up in Montana, so there on the Missouri River, because it was not too far, Great Falls, Montana. And now I'm in the northern part of the metro, Mississippi River.
I'm Cynthia, and I grew up in St. Paul, about 3 blocks from the Mississippi. And we used to be very daring and try to go down the bluffs. And so I've always felt very connected to the Mississippi, I will say. So.
I'm Graydon, and I grew up very near Lake Minnetonka. So that's my, and there are other small lakes in the area. So the lakes of Hennepin County are kind of my, that's what I identify with.
We also live right now about a block from
Minnehaha
Creek,
Right.
which kind of connects both Lake Minnetonka and the Mississippi River. So
I'm Lisa, and I live out in the western suburb of Orono. And we lived for more than 20 years in the same neighborhood as Diamond Lake, which is in the Minnehaha Creek watershed. And I thought it was really interesting because we live now on the edge of a wetland setback. And I was really interested in where the water goes from here. And I'm still in the Minnehaha Creek watershed district. And I think that's because we're not that far from Lake Minnetonka, and it's the origin of Minnehaha. So yeah, it's really connected.
I'm Daryl. I was born and raised in northern Illinois, about 100 miles west of Chicago. We moved here 40 some years ago. And we live just a couple of blocks from the church. And I really identify with Diamond Lake and also Minnehaha Creek.
And I'm Norma, and I grew up in Northeast Iowa. I had seen so few lakes in my life, and then living in Minneapolis, where there were lakes everywhere, was just unreal to me. So that was a real welcome part of my life.
I'm Sue, and I was born and raised in Grand Forks, North Dakota, on the Red River of the North. And now we are down in Apple Valley near the Minnesota River.
I'm John. I live in Brooklyn Park, but of course work at Diamond Lake. And yeah, when I think about it, I've always kind of been connected to lakes one way or another. I think growing up kind of in the cities, but on the northern side of the cities, I spent my college time in Fargo, so also on the Red River. And then I spent about 8 years at Camp Onamia near Mille Lacs Lake, which was about, the camp was located about 2 miles from where actually Louisiana was claimed for this country. And really connected to with the native peoples, and the history of the land and the water up there was always interesting to me. Judy or Dan wants to share, you can, or else we can kind of move on.
If not, we can move on. And thank you all for introducing yourselves. I love hearing, especially you guys did it so well, connecting your place to water. I think Norma said it, she's never seen so many lakes in her life until moving here. And I feel very similar in that people in this area are so connected to the waters around them. And that just redefines kind of the barriers that we normally draw of these states and congressional districts or counties, and kind of breaks them down and says, yeah, those are there, but those are very human made. And we have other boundaries as well that bring us together. Lisa, you said when you moved and you stayed in the same watershed district, the Minnehaha district. And I think that just says so beautifully how water connects us in so many different ways and redefines it into an ecological community. So I'm going to take a moment to share my screen again, but bear with me while I pull it up. So I'm going to take a step back and go back to maybe elementary school or middle school, or maybe you've never heard this, but I understand that we all come from very different points. So I want to zoom out before we zoom in. And we talk about a watershed a lot in this presentation. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what a watershed is. So a watershed is an area of land that drains into a body of water, such as a lake, river, stream, or wetland. I spelled river wrong in my presentation. Need to change that. So it's water that rains down or comes from snow melt, which I think we often forget that snow is also part of our watershed in our water system. And it runs down through different bodies and connects in a river or lake. And we have small watersheds. Oftentimes around this area, they're watershed districts or watershed management organizations that we divide them up to, but then they connect to larger watersheds, such as the Mississippi River Basin. And then also, I think we've all heard this before in elementary school. I know I learned it as a song, evaporation, precipitation. Yeah, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you have precipitation that rains down through rain or snow. It can go into our ground and then seep into our lakes and rivers, or it can come into our lakes and rivers as runoff. And then also some of it just leads through evaporation and transpiration back into the clouds, or it comes back down as rain. And it's all a beautiful cycle that connects together. So that's kind of our long zoom out. I will say as well, if anybody has any questions throughout this presentation, we have a small group, which is fun. So you can just come off mute and ask it. I don't see this chat when I'm in my screen share. So just interrupting me is probably better than using the chat. So now connecting this back to our own faith. And this is where we get into baptism, which is so central to our faith. And I think one of the best examples of how we use water. We use water for so many other symbolisms as well. But when you baptize an infant, in congregations, they sometimes lift up the infant and show them around the church and the congregation, saying, welcome to your place and welcome to your community. Here is your community. And these waters that are in our watershed that we baptize with are also what connects us to our community, but also to our place. And I think Dr. Larry Ramstrom, I can't pronounce his last name, Dr. Larry said it so well when he said, we seldom connect the waters of life connected with baptism with the waters of life on which absolutely all life depends. So I said I was also going to connect this to environmental justice. So my own personal definition, after taking a couple of college courses, has come out of environmental justice is the fact that no one group of people should be burdened with the effects of environmental degradation. And then the EPA puts it as that everyone should enjoy the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards. Everyone should have equal access to the decision-making process to have healthy environments in which to live, learn, and work. So how do we see this in our water? One example is at Standing Rock. So I don't know how familiar you are with Standing Rock. I know the Synod got somewhat involved. But Standing Rock, the indigenous people came together and said, there's a pipeline that's proposed to go through our lands and we don't want it here because it could potentially burden us with an oil spill and degrade our lands, and we don't have a choice in this decision-making process. So I appreciate you guys doing the land acknowledgement and saying, here's the people who were here before us who might not have had a decision in us taking land from them, but we respect them and want to honor them. And in this decision to put a pipeline through, there was no choice there. And we're seeing this again happening up in Line 3 up north, where tar sands are we're building a pipe to pipe tar sands through indigenous communities and reservations when the indigenous people are saying, we don't want that. This is our sacred land that we hold dear. And that could cause an unequal burden upon our lands. Another example that you hear a lot about is Flint, Michigan. So up in Flint, the city decided that, hey, we're going to get our water from a different source, which was fine and probably for the best long term. But oftentimes in cities, old pipes have been laid years ago, which are full of lead. Newer areas or areas of wealth have replaced those pipes so that they don't have lead in their water. There are ways to keep lead from flowing from the pipes into our water by putting chemicals in. They're safe for us to drink, but keep the lead out. So when the city switched over their pipes or their water system from an old source to a new source, they did not keep the chemical balance the same, and suddenly lead was being leached into these drinking water of these people, often burdening low income and people of color as well. So leading to people not having a choice and not being able to wash themselves or their food or to cook with the water that we should all have rights to. So that's keeping it out and zooming outwards into the large environmental justice issue. But as we've clearly demonstrated, we're all connected to water very near and dear to us. And have not heard of any environmental justice issues happening on Diamond Lake. That does not mean they aren't happening. But water flows from one place to another and connects us to those environmental justice issues far away and downstream from us or upstream from us in many ways as well. So there's ways to fight for those larger issues, but there's also things that you can do at home. So earlier I showed that picture of what a water cycle is and what our watersheds are. And so this is showing again kind of how water comes in and where it goes to. And you can see oftentimes in these natural systems, water goes into the ground and only a little tiny bit runs off, and maybe a small percentage is evaporated. And when it goes into the ground, it cleans it and helps to absorb it. When it hits a city or impervious surfaces, a lot more of it is runoff. And you can see below, when we get runoff picks up stuff such as oil and trash and gas and pollutants from our golf courses or just on the side of the road or from us washing our car. And it puts into storm drains. Storm drains are often not treated water. And so that storm drains go straight into our creeks, which then goes downstream, and us being at the headwaters of the Mississippi affects a large number of people. Also, when you have runoff, it can pick up and just continue going and move pretty quickly, picking up more debris along the way or causing erosion at large scale levels. And you can kind of see the difference of the two rivers here. And I'm not sure which rivers those are, but there are two close by. So our goal overall when we're thinking about water and our watersheds is to get the systems that we're living in to function like our natural systems. Because when they function like a natural system, it protects the people around us and the people downstream. And that's what you see people in environmental justice issues fighting for, is for a more natural system, less disturbed. Now I get we all just can't go out and live in the middle of nowhere and pretend that we don't have an effect on the environment. But there are ways that we can do stuff at home to help protect our waters. So we do this by protecting the natural areas around us. We can reduce impervious surfaces. So that's like what we were seeing in the city with water running off. You can see here, this is a driveway, and you can think through, well, maybe we don't actually need all of that. And then maybe we could add some permeable pavers here to help water soak in and not just run off. We can keep runoff on the site and help it to soak into the ground. I love talking about prairie grasses, and sometimes I'll go deeper into prairie grasses in these presentations, because as you can see in this picture, you have your normal grass, which has shallow roots, and then 3 different types of prairie grasses, which have deep roots, which once again help soak up water as it comes in. Plants are also really cool in that a lot of plants can take up some of the pollution that comes in. And so it takes it up and stores it rather than it running off into our streams. And I think when we talk as Christians, you can go into deep metaphors about plants being deeply rooted in their place and us being deeply rooted in our place, and how when we're both deeply rooted, it really helps care for our larger ecological community and personal community as well. So being deeply rooted is caring for a place. So when we talk about this, there's 3 things that are helpful to think about: clean it up, slow it down, and soak it up or filter it. So for clean it up, cleaning up kind of leaves and debris that we see around, that could be trash. There are ways to adopt a storm drain. I think I talked about how most storm drains lead right to our water and do not actually get filtered. And there are some that get filtered, but not many. So you can adopt a drain through a website and then say, we're going to care for it. Maybe it's a hospitality committee in our congregation. Says hospitality extends to our storm drains and to our ecological community and to those downstream, or maybe it's a youth group saying this is something we want to commit to. And then by adopting the storm drain, you just say, I'm going to clean up trash around it and make sure it's clear. Maybe it's marking storm drains to say that they go to the river through your watershed district. Cleaning up dog poop is also important because there's more nutrients heading to our water from that than ever before. I know during non-COVID times, and I've not done this, I've heard we sometimes help youth or churches build watershed models, and we have little sprinkles to represent pollution. So you can get brown sprinkles, and kids like making it to be poop, because who as a kid does not like that word? And then you spray water on it and see all the toxins or nutrients from our poop going down into our rivers. And so cleaning up little things. And then the other big one with cleaning up, especially here, is salt. So it only takes 1 teaspoon of salt to pollute 5 gallons of water. So salt, when it enters water, goes through a chemical reaction and becomes chloride, which you cannot actually take out of our water ever. So this is a big one where there's a group called Stop Oversalting that works at the legislative level to help say, okay, a lot of the reasons businesses salt is so people don't fall and they don't have a liability suit on our hands. How can we protect nonprofits and businesses and cities from having these liability cases? So there is legislation in place that if you have a good salting policy, you will not be held responsible. If you say these are the policies we have to reduce our salt while also caring for it. There's also trainings that the city puts on through Minnesota Pollution Control Agency about smart salting that we often promote during the salting season. And I think some of them are still happening now. So the next big thing is to slow our water down. That can be either saying, how do we get it to a place that will soak it up, or just making it so it doesn't run straight into our lakes, or having a rain barrel. And I think going back to that one picture that I showed with the natural area and the city, slowing our water down helps stop erosion, and it helps stop the water from picking up as much debris as it goes along. And then the final one is to soak it up. So we have rain gardens to soak it up. And I have a picture on the next slide of your own rain garden that somebody sent to John, and John passed it along. So rain gardens work to catch water that is running off of places and to hold it there so it has time to filter through the ground and to be soaked up, rather than running off a parking lot and going straight into the lake or somewhere else. And I already showed you the prairie grasses and lawn grasses, about the ratio of root to stem and above ground. And there's just so many beautiful images of roots. I love it. It's beautiful. And then permeable pavers is another one that you can do to say, rather than letting the water run off, it's going to soak in. So here's your own rain garden in use from this year. You can see the water has been caught down below. I don't know if this is running off your parking lot or from your backyard. Maybe somebody can unmute and explain where this is at better than me. You also sent this nice little pamphlet thing, and I don't remember which year this rain garden was built, but it looks very well done and got some nice awards as well.
Hey,
Cynthia,
Kathy, you know more than I do. You sent this to me. So who does know about the rain gardens? It looked like it was early 2010s, like 2012.
Yeah, it was kind of at least probably 10 years ago or 7, 8 years ago. And it was an effort, to slow down the water. With our flat parking lot and the flat roof of our building, we had, terrible runoff. And by doing what we did, we now get credits from the city. And just this past summer, we redid our pavers. So there's more pavers down there in the backyard. And we've done more plantings. We have a couple of members who have really put some energy into proper plantings back there. And boy, it's beautiful when it's blooming in the summer. And it works very well. That one picture, when it rained a couple weeks ago, the rain garden on the west side was full. And that's what it's supposed to do. It fills up and then it slowly seeps into the ground instead of rushing across the top of the land into the lake.
I was excited to receive that photo. It's good to see that you guys have already started this work, but there is always more that you can do too. And that it sounds like you've gone ongoing and caring for the rain garden.
We have 100%, we catch 100% of the water that falls on our property. It goes through the rain garden.
An impressive thing. And like Kathy said, there's oftentimes financial benefits to doing this as well.
We got a grant too. That Metro Bloom, we got a lot of financial help to put it in, and then a break from our energy utility bills.
I'm curious what the energy utility bill is. It's one that I have not heard of before, because I've heard of the storm. Cities will give you a discount for a non-profit business.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, that's one. Yeah.
Managing the stormwater runoff.
And there are grants available for often individuals wanting to put this into their home, either a rain garden, or I've also heard of grants available for putting in rain barrels as well. So trying to collect the rainwater and say, we use water anyways on our grass, so why not collect it and use it on our gardens rather than just having it run off?
When we lived in Minneapolis, we put 2 rain gardens in our lot. And we got a grant from the Minnehaha Watershed District, which was, yeah, it was really helpful.
Mhm. Well, I would love to hear if anybody else has stories about things they've done or things they would like to do. I would love to hear that. If not, I have another thing we can go ahead and do.
Madeline, this is Norma.
Mhm.
I have a question. I was intrigued by your picture of the salt, and I know there have been times when it feels like not only on our church parking lot, but just walking around the city that, way too much salt has been used for fear, over salting. Is there any way to mitigate that after the salt is down, or once it's spread out, it's done and it's just going to wash away? Or is there anything that we can do or that people can do once there's too much salt?
There is. That's a great question, Norma. Thanks for asking it. So one thing you can do is if it's in your own front yard, clean it up, just get out a broom once the ice has melted and just sweep it up, and then it doesn't go into our drains. I was also talking with somebody from Stop Over Salting. They call it SOS. And she's an older lady, so sadly she's stepping back and not running as much anymore, but they work at kind of the city and state level to say, how do we help solve this issue? And she was just saying how so many people often call about there not being enough salt out, but so few people call their cities or counties about too much salt being put out. And she said, cities love hearing that there's too much salt and will come and clean up if you see like a large spill or just too much on the roads. Or I know I've seen bike paths, I'm a biker. And so on the bike paths, they have to like pile it at the corner because they don't want people falling, but you don't need that much. So you can actually call it in. I think at smaller cities, it's a city. I don't know if Minneapolis City is the best person to call or if there's county lines, but I can look that up for you if you'd like. And just say, hey, I'm at the corner of Glenwood and Penn, and I see that there's a big pile of salt. Just wanted to let you know it's here, and then I'm watching it, and that I would like for you to clean it up, or maybe let me know your salting practices. So that's one way. And then advocating for people to go to smart salting trainings. So if you have a business that you see is putting too much salt out, I know there's down over by Eden Prairie, I'm going to blank on the watershed district name. Bassett Creek Watershed District, I think it is. They are working to get little postcards out that people can hand to businesses, just telling businesses when the next smart salting training is and how to attend and a little bit of the benefits from going to it. So that's something they're still working on putting those together. But once they get them put together, I can send that out or help promote it if you're interested in those, because I'm pretty sure they would love for anybody in any watershed district to print them. So
Yeah, send to me if you can, Madeline.
yeah, I
can
will.
get it out to people.
Let me jot down that note. Otherwise I will forget it.
I think Drayden had a comment.
Well, yeah, this doesn't have to do with salt, but it's just something that made me think of it. We have lowlands, kind of wetlands on our farm property, and the mosquito control district comes out in the spring and sprays that. And I've always asked them, okay, is this safe, or this, is this good? And they assure me that it is, and that they have to do it to keep mosquitoes. If they don't do it, we would really have a mosquito problem. But I'm just curious what you know about that.
I actually don't know anything about that. I've
Okay.
not thought about that one before, but I'm sure if they're spraying at large scale that they've thought about it some. I also know that they call it TOXA, the policy federally that regulates our chemicals, is, in my opinion, not as tough as it should be. I would have to look more into that, but I'm very curious now, so I will.
It does feel like it's, I mean, especially out here where we live, these helicopters are really flying low, and I don't know, it just makes me nervous to even be outside when that's happening.
You do have
So
to
I would be
wonder about
curious
it.
too about that.
Mhm.
Ours, actually, the last couple of times a woman has come out and parked and then gone down into the field and sprayed. So,
I saw a guy spraying along the side of the road when I was walking yesterday.
yeah.
So maybe, I think he was an official kind of a guy. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like the less we can spray on it, the more we're getting back to those
Yeah.
natural systems
Yeah.
and the way it should be. And there's less problems, but well, I have another resource that I would like to share with you all that I found fun, and I think you will as well. I know that this only works within the metro region, and they're working on expanding it larger. So I think we have a mix from what it sounds like of where people are located. And if you're not in the metro region, maybe you can just put in Diamond Lake or another area in the metro region that you know. But I will put it in the chat. And this is a path to the river where the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization put together this nice little map where you can put in your address and follow a drop as it goes from wherever your address you put in down to the Mississippi River. And you can see the time that it takes to get there and a little bit of how polluted it is along the way. So if you have it pulled up, if you have any questions or you're not able to see it, I can start sharing my screen as well. But if you put it in and then just want to shout out comments that you see along the way, you can try out different addresses.
Let's do it from the church.
Do you want me to share it from as you do it from the church? We could do that together.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Pastor John, do you know the address of the church?
No,
Off the
but
top of your head?
Kathy, I bet does.
It looks like it's technically outside of the.
Is it technically outside?
Mm,
5760 Portland Avenue South.
Okay.
Maybe we
yeah, it
can
is
go
outside. But you could do
just north of there.
just north of there. So if you just go to the southernmost part of the map, so scroll down a little bit.
Mhm.
Try to do anywhere in this next to Lake Harriet, I suppose. Or Bryant neighborhood up there would work.
That was
As
kind
far
of-
south as you can go.
Yeah.
Normally you can type in an address, but I'm wondering.
Do you know if they have these for other parts of the city as well?
I don't think they do.
Okay.
This is like a very unique thing that just came out this past year. So there you can see a little bit of wherever I clicked. So the time to the river is 2 hours and 42 minutes. And it looks like this one actually flows through a treated area. Let's
That's
see if I can-
fascinating.
It is, and it's fun to play around with. I'll see if I can find my address here in a little bit. It's not working as well as it normally does, and I'm wondering if they're having problems with it. So I'll show you where I'm at. I'm close to this area up here. I'm close to around there. So you can follow a little drop as it goes, the medium pollution, and then it hits the Mississippi River.
Huh.
And it's also interesting to see as you play around and think about the environmental justice of where pollution's at, who has access to cleaning water. We saw over there. Let's see if we can go to the Powderhorn Park neighborhood. If somebody else wants me to click somewhere, I can.
Try Phillips neighborhood. Anywhere in there would be good.
Mhm. That should be covered under it.
Looks like they haven't mapped that yet.
Yeah.
Looks like they have it. Like I said, it's pretty new. Let's try somewhere else.
It's pretty cool.
Well, you can play around with that on their own if you'd like. And it was working the other day.
Thanks for sharing that. That's a cool resource.
All right, let's try this one. I'll click there. It's just fun to watch it go. It's your own little area, but we can stop. Does anybody else have an area that they want me to try while I'm pull it up?
Hey, Madeline, this is Dan. I have a
Mhm.
question for you,
Yeah.
and I might have missed it at the beginning, so I apologize if I missed. I was having some technical issues connecting for whatever reason tonight. So what is there anything currently that the Synod and you're doing in relates to environmental justice, like any specific projects or areas here in the cities you're working on now? Apologize
That's a
if you already
great
covered it.
question. So like I shared, most of our Ecumenical Water Initiative work that we do is just working with individual congregations. So if you guys have a project that you come across, like the rain garden or working with your rain garden, we can help connect you to grants or to thinking through how do we talk about our faith in connection to our waters. So it's more on the individual level. We don't work large scale with it just because we did for a little bit, but funding and time has been cut for that for various reasons, and partly because it is ecumenical. And so our ecumenical partners have diminished a little bit with time. That's the main reason there. But for our EcoFaith network work, we work primarily with energy. And so we're largely working in the South Metro region, working with Minnesota Valley Electric Co-op and thinking through how do you engage your local energy democracy. And that works really well there because co-ops, it's easy to connect to those. But at the city level, we've been working with inclusive financing. Inclusive financing takes away the burden on the individual to finance for energy efficiency and says, okay, we might not all have access to, thank you, Pastor John, for putting it in the chat there. We might not all have access to capital to do energy efficiency upgrades to our home. But if you look at like climate change, energy efficiency upgrades is one way that we can help shift the needle on this large scale issue. So the energy
air is another one, I think, Madeline, too, that I've heard, at least in the cities, in regards
heard
to
that, yeah.
environmental justice, right? So communities of color, typically in the cities here, are much more impacted by air pollutants.
So with the inclusive financing, we pushed it through, and it's currently the Centerpoint is willing to try it out, but it's in a bunch of litigations that we can't control. So we're kind of taking a pause, and we'll have more actions that we would love for people to help join in on. But you can't really do that with legal stuff. We've also joined with the 100% campaign to push forward with 100% renewable energy for all of Minnesota. And that's one where they would love help. And so I would, if you want to know more and get involved with that, let me know now and I can connect you, or reach out afterwards and I can connect you with the steps you can take towards pushing that through.
Great.
Does that answer your question,
presentation.
Dan?
That was really good. Yeah, thanks.
No
Yeah,
problem.
Madeline, could you, and maybe you already did, I'm sorry, but could you send me more stuff on the 100% campaign as well?
I sure can. And I know we just led kind of an event thinking through how you can interact with your legislator through the 100% campaign, but we did not record it, but I have plenty of resources about how to get involved. And especially their big action right now is where the state legislator is at. It's in their third session. So this is an important time to push policy through that's already been written and just needs support. So now's a great time to get involved. Nick, you're asking us about Excel. And that is a good question. And we've tried. So I think Nick just sent it to me. What connections do you have with Excel? We've tried to work with Excel and push through and say we value energy efficiency and renewable energy, and we as Lutherans would like to engage and push through. But Excel, there's 3 different ways that electric utilities work. They're either investor owned, which is kind of like a regulated monopoly, which is what Xcel is. They're municipal, which is the city saying that, okay, electricity should be a right. So we'll help provide electricity for you. Or they're co-ops, which is owned by the people, and people are member owners and so can make decisions ideally on their electric. Because Xcel is investor owned, it just takes a whole lot more to push it through, and you have to go through the Public Utility Commission, and it just becomes like you're walking against a brick wall pretty quickly. We've said ideally we would love to do more with Xcel and to get people in our churches engaging with that level of how to make changes in our energy system. But at this point, we don't have the power to do that. So we're working with the co-ops, and hopefully we'll grow that. But inclusive financing is ideally our way to engage with the metro and energy. However, the Public Utility Commission is also in a brick wall and messy litigations.
I used to work there, Madeline, in their
Yeah.
corporate comms area. So let's talk, okay?
Okay, we should. I'm going to copy your email.
Once again, another place Nick has worked.
Well, there's a demand side management approach that you could potentially pursue as well. And they're always looking for marketing channels. So
Okay. This is good. This is why we have these conversations, because it's just a good way to connect, and that's how change happens. Well, if there's no other.
Madeline, what would you
Yeah.
say is like the most common congregations maybe take on or are working on this topic of environmental justice?
So on the topic of environmental justice, water seems to be the big one that a lot of churches can connect with, just because churches are pretty divided politically, and water should not be political. It is pretty easy to make not political. So I know in the past, we had people go to Standing Rock when that was happening. There are a couple congregations engaging Line 3 and trying to stop it. That's one that does get a little bit more political, sadly. But there's a resolution currently being tried to pass through at Synod Assembly about making a stance on Line 3. So those are kind of the larger justice issues, and every congregation has their own, but I think mainly it's water and Line 3 and Standing Rock seem to be the big ones.
Great, thanks.
I have a question back to, well, poop. We have a lot of geese and ducks that come out of the lake in our backyard. Would it be wise to kind of clean that up, or just keep it, whatever happens naturally?
I think it'd be, yeah. I don't think people do, just because it takes a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
They're small and annoying. But yeah, in a normal natural system, you would have your prairie grasses to stop that are waving in the wind and could help stop it going in, and they would help absorb up the nutrients from that poop. But oftentimes along our lakes, we've just made them either pavement or lawn grass, which does not have those deep roots and does not soak it up. So if people have the energy to do that, go for it.
I think Kirk got a new job this weekend, Kathy.
And once again, that's where it goes back to planting and thinking through our natural systems, is how can we make those barriers along our lake have those native planted roots rather than the yards. A great question.
I'm talking about Diamond Lake's backyard, not mine.
Oh, sorry. Good to know.
Then it sounds like Pastor John has a new job this weekend.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think Kirk is still good for it.
Can we just stop mowing the lawn out back of our church and save some money and protect the environment while we're at it?
That'd be a start. I know prairie grasses look a little bit prettier than yard grasses. Yard grasses are meant to be mown. Prairie grasses are meant to grow tall, and oftentimes you have prairie wildflowers that can come up as well that you plant in with the mix. But not mowing would be something. I know my dad always tries to let our grass go a little bit longer because it doesn't get as dry during the summer he cleans. So similar to that, if you let it grow, the roots go down deeper and can soak up more. But I don't think they'll ever get as, I know they won't get as long as prairie grasses roots will.
Do
So-
do
go
they
ahead,
run
Lacey.
all the way down to the lake right now?
No, we go down to the park board property, which is the lake shore.
But we
I
have,
think 8 feet back from the lake shore.
we also have lawn on the north side, right? By that little fireplace and the, you know, that area there, isn't there lawn there? We could
It's all
just let
park board as well.
that park board land also, but we have to mow it, right? Or we have
We're
to take care of it,
responsible
we're
for
responsible
maintenance.
for it?
Yeah, yeah.
Would they let us just let it go?
You know,
I think
I think that's a great idea, other than our youth have used it for outdoor play area. But I like the idea of letting it go and putting it in natural habitat.
Well, my other concern is now with all those brand new windows in the offices in the basement, if you let the grass grow, you're not going to get the beautiful view out to the lake. You're just going to get grass. So I think there's probably some kind of in between that we can come up with, compromise we can come up with.
Although I think technically the geese eat all the grass, so now it's just actually just dirt. So now we've got erosion issues on top of it. Just saying, maybe there's that. Maybe
The
there's
other thing is, speaking as someone who has a ground office and a window, I'm more concerned about what the deck construction is going to do to my view than prairie grasses or any grass or flowers. But you can't handle that one, Madeline. That's not your
Your area.
that's not your area. I'm not asking. I'm just complaining.
These are all good thoughts though.
These are such interesting things to talk about though as a church. And I think, Dan, you talked about starting points. I think the more we have those conversations as a church, what can we do and keep it on our mind? I think those are valuable conversations to be had.
And those conversations often lead to larger conversations about maybe why is the church tearing up the grass here and why are we planting this? And then you can be like, well, we care about environmental justice and there's water in environmental justice, but that also goes deeper into energy issues and many other facets that your church can take on and talk about.
I think what Mr. Graydon was mentioning is he's looking forward to the opportunity of taking his laptop onto the deck and enjoying the view and working from outside.
No, that's a complete bastardization of what I'm thinking. But that's okay. I appreciate your spin doctrine. You know, it's interesting on the rain garden that there were some people who were concerned that the rain garden was somehow contributing to water seepage issues in the basement. That we shouldn't be piling up all this water right, you know,
Next to the
within
building.
6 feet of the building. Yeah, these big, and it was I mean, it's not the case, but it was frustrating for those of us who felt that this was the right thing to do, to then hear, oh man, we're taking a chance with water piling up near the foundation, and that's going to seep in, which it doesn't. But
Yeah,
that's
well,
some of the
the
things that
foundation
that's some of the things you fight against or come up against, I should say.
So this might be a sort of dumb question, but like I saw in the cleanup slides, one of the slides along with the salt was the grass clippings on the driveway. Could you say more about that? Because I don't know that I ever clean up my grass clippings on my driveway.
Yeah. Once again, it's similar to leaves and other stuff where in a normal forest or prairie, they would kind of stay where they fall and would just layer on top and break down naturally and go into the soil and provide nutrients straight to where they're at and kind of really close to where they fall. Or about on those impervious surfaces, such as the driveway, they rest there, and then the water comes down and they get washed away and into our storm drains and into our river. And then they break down in our lakes or rivers. And suddenly all those nutrients are directly into the river rather than in the soil. And then you have problems with algal blooms where things come in and try to eat all these nutrients or use them up because they're like, lots of nutrients. This is a perfect place for us to be. And then they use them up really, really, really quickly and take up all the oxygen because it uses oxygen to build that up. And then you suddenly have a lake that's deprived of oxygen and fish cannot be there in healthy systems, and the whole lake automatically dies because it's called eutrophication, if you want the fancy term for it. So
once again, we're all connected. And so our
Yes.
individual acts of responsibility do matter.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it is 8 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of all your time. But this was great to meet you all and hear what you're all doing and to be with a good group from Diamond Lake Lutheran Church.
Yeah, Madeline, thank you so much for joining us. This was helpful, educational, good discussion, and just really appreciate you taking time to share this with us today.
Well, thank you. And I'm here as a
Thank you.
resource, so feel
Thank
free
you.
to reach out whenever.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording and then I'll